Hi dear students, welcome back to another video. In today's session, we have 11th standard English prose 1 titled Portrait of a Lady. Okay, written by Indian author Kushwant Singh, very famous writer. Okay, let's discuss this prose. This is wonderful piece of prose. The name of the prose is The Portrait of a Lady. Okay, it's written by Kushwant Singh, a typical Indian writer, very famous writer, novelist, journalist, and he is a very important intellectual in India. Okay, so I have given you the picture. Kushwant Singh is no more, but yes, written so many novels and short stories like this. Okay, we take up the first stanza. Okay, here he recalls, Kushwant Singh recalls her beloved, his beloved grandmother and her contributions and the love, the great bond that he had with her, with his grandma. Okay, he recalls all incidents and events, that times that he spent with his grandma. Okay, so he describes his grandma beautifully. Okay, my grandmother, like everybody's grandmother, my grandmother is like everybody's grandmother, was an old woman, right? She's old, of course. Grandmother refers to old women only. I have, you have, all have grandmother, right? She had been old and wrinkled for 20 years that I had known her. Okay, he had known him for 20 years. For 20 years, her appearance has not changed. Okay, so there was no change for 20 years. I had known her. Okay, people said that she had once been young and pretty, and people said, that your grandma was very pretty young woman. But even I had a husband. Of course, she had a husband when she was so small, but not now. But that was not to believe. Okay, so my grandma was young and pretty, beautiful, was not believable. Okay, I could not believe that. Okay, he says like this, grandma. Okay, wrinkled face of the grandma. This is how a grandma looks like, needless to explain. My grandfather's portrait hung above the mantelpiece. There's a mantelpiece, fireplace. Okay, above the fireplace, the shelf. Now there is a portrait hanging. Okay, now this is a photo of grandfather. Next, he describes the portrait of his grandfather. Okay, mantelpiece in the drawing room. You are a big turban, right? It's a clothes around the head. Okay, so I'll show you the picture also I have for you. This is turban. Okay, worn by mostly the agriculturist farmers generally. Okay, so that saves them from the beat of the sun and sometimes rain and all these things. Okay, so it's a small towel that is bound around the head, right? So you wear a big turban, right, and loose fitting clothes. He has loose fitting clothes. That's old fashioned. Okay, not for tight fitting, as boys do nowadays, right? His long white beard, so never shaved. So he grew his white beard, covered the best part of his chest. So it's reaching, his beard is reaching up to his chest. Best part of it covers the best part of the chest, and he looked at least 100 years old for looking for appearance. Now he appears like a person who lived for 100 years. So 100 years, he did not look like a sort of person who would have a wife or children. So we cannot imagine that this man has got wife and children. It means what? He looks very old. It means he had a lot of grandchildren. That's a meaning for it. Okay, he did not look like a sort of a person who would have a wife or children. He looked as if he could only have lots and lots of grandchildren. Okay, there is no possibility that this old man could have a wife and children. okay, because he is looking so old that he could have only lots and lots of grandchildren, okay. So he describes his grandfather. But this piece of prose is only about his grandmother. See, as for my grandmother being young and pretty, that was almost revolting, because I have used to see my grandma as a grandma, okay, aged old lady, okay. But when I think that she was so young and pretty, my thought is revolting. I am unable to believe that, because I have seen only grown-up lady like this. I could not have imagined that she could be pretty young. She often told us the games she used to play as a child. So she was playing so many games. She used to tell that. Okay, that seemed quite absurd. It was unclear. Okay, the name of the games that she told is quite absurd and undignified. It was not noble. It's not dignified on her part. Okay, it was not a good game. So we treated it like a fables. It's like a stories, unbelievable stories, right? Okay, fables of prophets. Okay, prophet is someone who able to foretell the future, right? So he used to tell us. Okay, it's like a fables of a prophet, right? Unable to believe what's going to happen. So she used to tell so many names of the games. It's unbelievable for us. Okay, right? She had always been short, not tall. So and fat, slightly bent, because when people are getting aged and they will slowly bend, right? Her face was crisscross of wrinkles running from everywhere to everywhere. So face is, when people are getting aged, it's quite nature that their face is wrinkled, right? It's running from everywhere to everywhere. Okay, this is quite instinct. It's quite natural appearance for any aged human being. So it's quite wrinkles are there, and now we were certain she had always been as I had known her. So there's no change. Grandma is my grandma, and there's no change in her. Okay, since I had known her. Old, so terribly old that she could not have grown older and had stayed at the same age for 20 years. I saw her before 20 years, she was old, she was grandma. After 20 years, I see her, still she is a grandma, and she cannot grow older than that age, because her growth cannot be seen, cannot be measured by him. So he says she could not have grown old. Okay, because she has already grown old. There are no ways, okay, in which she grow older than the present age, right? And she could been pretty, never have been pretty. I couldn't believe, but she was always beautiful. Of course, for me, my grandma couldn't have been pretty, but she was beautiful. According to me, my grandma is beautiful creature, right? She hobbled, walking unsteadily because she is aged. So, hobbling is walking unsteadily. About the age, spotless white with one hand resting on the waist. So, keeping the one hand on the waist. Okay. And she is walking in order to balance her stoop. Stooping means bending. She is bending, therefore she wants to balance that bending. Therefore, she keeps her hand on the waist and other telling the beads. In one more hand, she has got the beads of the rosary. Okay, I will show you what's that rosary. Okay, so this is rosary where she prays. Always she keeps praying. Okay, so she has the rosary and counting the rosary and telling prayers. Always. Her silver locks, silver tress. Okay, hair were scattered untidily. It's not beautiful. It's unclean, scattered. Her hair is scattered over her, puckered, pale, and losing. It appears when you lose blood, okay, insufficient blood, and puckered face, a wrinkled face, with her lips constantly moved in inaudible prayer. So she kept on praying always in her life, inaudible, that cannot be heard. Okay, she says prayer, but of course we can say that she's telling prayer, but it is inaudible. It is not heard to her ears. Okay, so she is telling prayers. Okay, and she was beautiful. So Kushwan Singh describes her grandma as she was beautiful. She was like a winter landscape. Okay, what landscape that is? Winter landscape. It's not. Okay, winter landscape. She's so beautiful landscape of the mountain. The scenery of the mountain, especially during winter, will be so attractive, fascinating. So he is comparing it's like she is like a winter landscape of the mountain, especially during winter, right? Expansive, pure, white serenity. Always she used to wear white dress, white serenity, peace. It refers to peace, breathing peace and contentment. She lived a quite satisfied life. She is very happy and she is living a quite satisfied life, contentment, right? Okay.
வருஷ கணக்காக கஷ்டப்பட்டு சம்பாதிச்சு ஒரு பள்ளிக்கூடத்தில் எடுத்துகிட்டு போய் உங்களோட பசங்களை சேர்க்குறீங்க. நீங்கள் சரியான ஸ்கூலில் தான் உங்கள் பசங்களை சேர்த்துருக்கீங்களா அப்படின்னு சொல்லி திங்க் பண்ண எவ்வளோ நேரம் நீங்கள் டைம் ஸ்பெண்ட் பண்ணுறீங்க. இங்கே வித்யாலக்ஷ்மி ஸ்கூலுக்கு வாங்க, இங்கே இருக்கிற டீச்சர்ஸோடு நீங்கள் பேசி பாருங்கள். அது மட்டும் இல்லை, ஸ்கூலை சுற்றி பாருங்கள். இங்கே ஆன்லைன் கிளாஸஸ் அட்டன் பண்ணுறதுக்கு கூட அவங்க வாய்ப்புகள் ஏற்படுத்தி தருவாங்க. இங்கே தாங்க பேனல் போர்டு, டிஜிட்டல் பேட் எல்லாம் வச்சு கிளாஸ் எடுக்கிறாங்க. குழந்தைங்களுக்கு நல்லா புரிகிற மாதிரி எடுக்கிறாங்க. என் பசங்களும் இதே பள்ளிக்கூடத்தில் தாங்க படிக்கிறாங்க. நான் அவங்கள வெறும் ஆசிரியராக மட்டும் பார்க்கல. உங்கள் குழந்தைகள் தவறு செய்யும் பொழுது, அதாவது ஒரு உதாரணத்துக்கு நான் சொல்கிறேன், இப்போ ஆன்லைன் கிளாஸஸ் அவங்க எடுக்கும்போது இந்த குழந்தைங்க ஏதோ ஒரு தவறு செய்யும் போது அவங்க இன்னொரு பெற்றோர்களாக கூட நான் பார்க்குறேன். ஏன்னா அவங்க உரிமைகளோடு கண்டிக்கிறாங்க, ஃப்ரெண்ட்லியாக பிஹேவ் பண்ணுறாங்க. இதெல்லாம் பார்க்கும்போது எனக்கு ரொம்ப சந்தோஷமாக இருக்குது. நல்ல இடத்துல, அதாவது என்னோட குழந்தைங்களை சேஃப் ஹேண்ட்ஸில் வச்சுருக்கேன் அப்படின்னு நான் ஃபீல் பண்ணுறேன். நான் சொல்கிறத கொஞ்சம் திங்க் பண்ணுங்கள். வித்யாலக்ஷ்மி ஸ்கூல் தான் பெஸ்ட்டுன்னு உங்களுக்கு தோணும். இல்லைங்க, நீங்கள் 4-5 ஸ்கூலோட கூட கம்பேர் பண்ணி பாருங்கள். வித்யாலக்ஷ்மி ஸ்கூல் தாங்க சூப்பர். நான் சொல்கிறத கேளுங்க. உங்கள் பசங்களையும் வித்யாலக்ஷ்மி ஸ்கூலில் எடுத்துகிட்டு சேருங்க. உங்கள் குழந்தைங்களை பெஸ்ட் ஆக்குங்க.
My grandmother and I were good friends, of course. My grandmother and my good friends, my parents left me with her when they went to live in the city. My parents, they went away to live in the city because they go on living because their job is like that. So they got a job in the city. So they left me under the care of my grandma. My parents left me with her when they went to live in the city, and we were constantly together. So my grandma and I were together always in the absence of my parents. She used to wake me up in the morning, early morning every day. She used to wake him because he has to go to school, right? So get me ready for school, and she said her morning prayer. Every morning she used to pray. So said her morning prayer in a monotonous sing song. Monotonous is boring. It's boring. There is no voice modulation or other things. Okay, there's no notes followed properly. So it's a monotonous sing song while she bathed. Okay, she gave him bath and dressed me in the hope that I would listen and get to know it by heart. Okay, she strongly believes that when she keeps telling the prayer, this small boy will listen to it every day and he will by heart it automatically. She thinks like that, but it is not happening because what he says is, okay, I listened because I loved her voice. Her voice is nice. I loved her voice. Her voice is nice, but never bothered to learn it. I never wanted to learn it. I never bothered to learn it. But the grandma is telling prayer every day in the morning in order to make him understand or make him by heart. Okay, know it by heart. But this boy likes her voice and listens to it, but never worried to learn about it. Okay. Then she would fetch my wooden slate. Slate will be there, wooden slate, and she is getting ready for school, and she is making him ready for school, which she had already washed and plastered with yellow chalk. So those days yellow chalk was used. So it was plastered and cleaned, everything was right. So tiny earthen ink pot used to be an earthen ink pot, okay, and a red pen. So those children, those days now, used to write in red pen. From this we understand, right? Nowadays you are allowed to write only in the in the blue and black pen, right? So tie them, finally they tie them in all bundle and hand it to me after a breakfast of a thick stale chapati. So usually they take chapatis usually, okay, and he calls it stale chapati. Stale is not fresh, okay, unfresh chapatis. Maybe if it is very hot, it's taken from the oven, it will be very hot. Otherwise, it will be a stale chapati, okay. So lost its freshness, that's all. Chapati, of course, tasty chapatis are there, but losing freshness, that's with little butter and sugar spread on it, okay. So she every day she spreads some butter and sugar over the food, that is chapati, okay. And we went to school, and he tells we went to school, we refers to both grandmother and grandchild Kushan Singh, okay. Went to school, she carried several stale chapatis with her for the village dogs. She is not only feeding me with chapatis, but also she is feeding village dogs also, okay. See, my grandmother always went to school with me because the school was attached to the temple. You must wonder why grandma should go to a temple, right? Because why would grandma go to school along with this boy? It is because the temple was attached. She is going to temple, please understand. So she used to go to temple, and the priest taught us the alphabet and morning prayer, okay. So grandmother takes the grandson to the school, and she leaves the school. The temple was attached to the school, okay. Who teaches there? See, priest teaches them alphabet and morning prayer also, while the children sat in rows, okay, on the either side of the veranda, singing the alphabet or the prayer in chorus. Chorus is singing together, right? My grandmother sat inside reading scriptures, holy text, maybe Quran, Bible, Bhagavad Gita. These are the scriptures. So she was reading holy scriptures sitting inside the temple, but children were sitting in the veranda and learning some alphabet and some prayer. This is how we had school days. When we had both finished and school is over, we would walk back together towards home. So after school hours, so they walk back. This time village dogs would meet us at the temple door. Village dogs would come there. Why? Why would dogs come there? I think so. Every day she just is throwing the chapatis to them, and dogs would meet us at the temple door. They followed us to our home, growling and fighting, growling, making so much of sound angrily, just growling and fighting with each other. For the chapatis we threw to them. We threw some chapatis to them. Therefore, the dogs were fighting for that chapati. Of course, they followed us till we reach our home. This is why she made extra chapatis in the morning. When my parents were comfortably settled in the city, of course, they went in search of job, they got the job and it became permanent. So, comfortably settled in the city, they sent for us. So, they took us to the city. So, my grandmother and I were taken to city. That was a turning point in our friendship. So, that was a turning point in our friendship. Our friendship would be very strong. Although we shared the same room. Okay, so in the city, they were taken to city. In city, they were given same room. They shared same. My grandmother no longer came to school with me. In city, it's not possible. In village, it is possible for grandma to go to school because school was attached to a temple. Okay, but in city, she could not go to school. Okay, I used to go to an English school in a motor bus. So she was going by those days bus. That's a motor bus. Okay, engine fitted bus. There were no dogs in the streets. There are no dogs in the streets. And she took to feeding sparrows in the courtyard, the city house. The courtyard of the city house, there were so many sparrows. Okay, you might have seen so many sparrows. I'll show you the picture also I have for you. Okay, in village, as long as she lived in village, she fed dogs with chapatis, right? But when she was taken to city and she was not going out, there were no dogs. Therefore, what she did, she used to feed sparrows in the courtyard every day. Okay. As years rolled by, many years passed, we saw less of each other. We cannot see each other. For some time, she continued to wake me up and get me ready for school. Sometimes, always, okay. Even in the city, she used to wake him up and get him ready for school. When I came back from school, it means she would ask me what the teacher had taught me. Okay, just like any other house, we have parents will ask the children, so what did you learn today? What the teachers have taught today? Just so they ask these questions. When I came back, she would ask me what the teacher had taught me. I would tell her English words and little things of Western science. So initially, when he was in village, he learnt alphabet. Again here, that's no more. So some English words, okay, and little things of Western science. I'm learning the law of gravity, Archimedes principle, and the world being round, etc. So one day she asked, "What are you learning in the school?" I told it's English words and Western science learning laws of gravity, Archimedes principle, and world being round, etc. This made her unhappy. She is not very happy about it. She is not happy about what he has learnt. Why? I will tell you. Okay. She could not help me with my lessons because he is going to some higher classes. Therefore, she could not help me with my lessons. Okay. She did not believe in the things they taught at the English school and was distressed that there was no teaching about God. That's the reason why I told you she is not happy with what's being learned in that English school. English school, they do not give importance to a God. That's a belief of this grandma. So she was not happy about it. So she did not believe in the things that they thought English school was distressed that there was no teaching about God. When there is no teaching about God, when there is no teaching about scriptures, holy scripts, then what is the use in the life? She thinks like that. Okay. So that must be taught according to grandma, but it's not taught in the English school where he studied. Okay. One day I announced that we were being given music lessons. The boy came home very happily. Grandma, do you know one thing? In my school they taught me some music lessons. He happily announced her. But she did not say any word. She said nothing. She said nothing. See, she said nothing. But her silence meant disapproval. She is not accepting what you said. You said happily that music lesson was the thing given to me today, and she said silent. See, she was silent. It means she did not like that music lessons. What she liked this, she expected some teachings of God should be taught in their school, but it's not taking place. So she is not happy about that Western education. Okay, so she was silent. It means she disapproved it. She rarely talked to me after that. She never talked. She rarely talked after that. She's not talking about school. When I went to university, I was given a room of my own, separate room, grown-up boy, so he was given separate room, grandma was given separate room. The common link of friendship was snapped, was disconnected, was cut. Snapped means cut. Okay, disconnected. Because initially when he was so small, they were living together and the one room was being shared by grandma and grandson together. But now he is a grown-up boy, so she was given separate room. This boy was given separate room when he went to university. The common link of friendship was disconnected. My grandmother accepted her seclusion with resignation. Okay, accepting something without any willingness. Okay. There is no other option. You cannot ask, yeah, I want a better room, I want this room and that room. It was given to her, she accepted it, okay, whatever it is. So, accepting with resignation means there is no other option, okay. She had to accept it and she accepted it. You cannot see whether she is willingly or unwillingly she accepted it. But she had to accept and she accepted it. That's resignation, okay. She rarely left her spinning wheel to anyone. She rarely left her spinning wheel to talk to anyone. So she started spinning some clothes round. Okay. She rarely talked to anyone. Okay. From sunrise to sunset. From sunrise to sunset. Okay. Morning to evening she sat by her wheel, spinning and reciting prayers. She was spinning and reciting, telling prayers, but she never talked to anybody. She took the life of seclusion, and it was a rare occasion where she talked with other people. The picture shows the spinning wheel of those days, right? Okay. So only in the afternoon she relaxed for a while to feed sparrows. Okay, in the afternoon time she used to feed sparrows in the courtyard while she sat in veranda breaking the bread into little bits. Hundreds of little birds collected round, creating a veritable noisy bedlam, confusion, chaos, chirping, and some came and perched on her legs, other on her shoulders, some even sat on her head. She smiled but never shooed them away. It used to be happiest half an hour of the day for her. Okay, in the afternoon she used to feed sparrows. Okay, what she did every day, she breaks the bread into small crumbs, small pieces of bread. Okay, and she's throwing the pieces to the sparrows. They all collected and they are making so much of noise. Okay, sometimes they came and sat upon her legs also, sometimes shoulder, sometimes sat on the head also, but she never worried and she always smiled, never shoot them, driving them away, chasing them away. Okay, she never did that, and it was the happiest, okay, half an hour for the grandma for the day. Okay, sparrows, okay, she was feeding sparrows sitting on the hands also. Okay, every day grandma used to feed hundreds of sparrows. When I decided to go to abroad for studies, I was sure my grandmother would be upset. Of course, she loves me so much. When I go abroad for the higher studies, she would be upset. Okay, but she is not. Okay, I would be away 5 years at her age. One could never tell, never realize. But my grandmother could. She was not even sentimental. There's no sentiment. Study is important, education is important, she thought. Therefore, she kept quiet and he went. She came to leave me at the railway station. She goes to railway station, okay, but she did not talk or show any emotion. There was no emotion and she did not talk at all. Okay, she was there in the railway station for send off. Okay, was going for higher studies, is going abroad. Okay, grandmother would say, do not go there and all these things. But this grandma understand the importance of education. Therefore, she kept quiet. Her lips, in the railway station, what happens? Her lips moved in prayer. Her mind was lost in prayer always. Her fingers were busy telling the beads or the rosary beads. Okay, rosary beads. I have shown the picture, right? Rosary. Silently, she kissed my forehead, and she kisses this boy on the forehead. And when I left, I cherished that moist imprint. He says that kiss of his grandma was a moist imprint on the forehead. Okay, perhaps that was the last sign of physical contact between us. Okay, that's the last time she touched this boy. Okay, so it was quite sentimental. By the time before leaving, she kissed on the forehead. Okay, but that was not so. After 5 years, I came back home. After 5 years, finished his studies, came back home. Grandma was alive, and she was met by her at the railway station again, railway station, and she did not look a day older. She appeared as she appeared 5 years ago, right? Back then, 5 years. Okay, she did not look a day older. Still, she had no time for words. Okay, and while she clasped me, caught me in her arms, I could hear she reciting her prayer again. She is not talking, but she is reciting her prayer. Even on the first day of my arrival, her happiest moments were with sparrows, whom she fed no longer with frivolous rebukes. Rebukes is scolding. She is scolding. Frivolous means non-serious, not seriously. Okay, non-serious rebukes. Okay, it's scolding with kind words like that. Okay, rebukes, scolding the sparrows, and she is feeding them. Okay, right. So this boy's arrival is not making her happy, but she is feeding the sparrows. That makes her happy. Okay, so the boy is back again after 5 years. In the evening, change came over. There's a big, tremendous, visible change came over her. There's a change in her attitude. She did not pray at all. She has been praying. The women who has been praying stopped praying, and she collected women of the neighborhood. She got an old drum. She took old drum, right, and started to sing. She started singing, collecting many women from the neighborhood, and started singing. Okay, beating a old drum. Several hours she thumped at the sagging skins of the dilapidated drum, damaged drum. Okay, the skin. The leather actually, the leather of the drum is sagging, hanging actually, and it's a damaged drum. Sang homecoming of warriors. So theme is about the warriors. She sang so many times, number of times, for several hours she has been singing. It was a strange behavior, and there's a change, and we had to persuade her, convince her to stop, to avoid overstraining. So this boy and the parents went to convince her. Persuade means convince her, do not do like this. And that was the first time since I had known her that she did not pray that day. That particular day, she collected several women and started singing of homecoming warriors. First day in his life, this boy saw she was not at all praying. Okay, and she's singing. Okay, some kind of change took over her. Next morning, she was taken ill. She was suffering from fever and maybe a fever. Okay, it was a mild fever, and the doctor told us that it would go. That's a mild. Doctor was brought, and doctor checked her temperature, and he said that's a mild fever, and it would go. My grandma thought differently. She told us that her end was near. She told that she was going to die. She said that since only a few hours before the close of the last chapter of her life, she had omitted to pray. She was not going to waste any more time talking to us. First time she behaved differently. She stopped praying. Doctor came and checked and told them that the fever would go, as it was a mild fever. But grandmother thought differently, and she told them that there was end for her life, and that it means she was going to die. Okay, she said that few hours of the last chapter of the close of her life. Okay, she had omitted to pray, and she was not going to waste more time talking to us. And she's not talking to anyone in the family. This made these people quite unhappy. Doctor checking the grandma told mild fever that would go. We protested. We prevented it. We protested. but she ignored us, brushed us aside. She never worried about our protest. We protested, Grandma, don't do like this, don't do like this, don't behave like this. But she never worried about protest. She lay peacefully, she was lying peacefully in the bed, praying and telling her beads. Now, next day she is praying, even before we could suspect. Before suspecting, before having any doubt, her lips stopped moving and rosary fell from lifeless fingers. Her rosary, with which she was praying, fell from her fingers. And a peaceful pallor, a whitish color spread on her face, and we know she was dead. We know that she was dead. Next day, as she said, she stopped praying, and rosary fell from her lifeless fingers, and there's a difference appear, very different appearance on her face, and she was dead. So Grandma was dead. We lifted her off the bed and as customary and laid her on the ground and covered her with red shroud with red clothes, to cover the dead body. It's a customary for those people. After a few hours of mourning, they mourned the death of Grandma, and relatives also came. We left her alone to make arrangements for her funeral. So, they kept the dead body of the Grandma in a place, left her alone, and they went to make arrangements for the funeral. Funeral arrangements were being made. So, in the evening, went to her room with a crude stretcher. So, they have crude stretcher to carry Grandma. So, crude stretcher, this is crude stretcher, to carry Grandma, evening, to be cremated, to cremate the body. They went to the room. What happens there? See, with the crude stretcher. The sun was setting in the evening, lit a room in the veranda with a blaze of golden light. In the evening light, evening sunset will be giving you a blaze of golden light always. We stopped halfway in the courtyard. They were stopping in the courtyard while they were just moving towards the dead body of the Grandma to carry her for the funeral, for the last rite for cremation. All over veranda in a room, right up to where she had laid it, stiff wrapped in the red shroud. Thousands of sparrows sat scattered on the floor. Nobody was there, no human being was there, but thousands of sparrows sat scattered all over the floor from where her dead body was kept. There was no chirruping, there was no sound. Though there were, imagine the sound when hundreds of sparrows come together, you cannot sit in that place. But there is no sound. They are not making any sound. It means these small creatures also are mourning the death of that Grandma. We felt sorry for the birds. And because there is no one after Grandma to throw the bread pieces every day. So my Grandma fetched some bread. Leaving the dead body, my mother, Kushan Singh's mother, she fetched some bread for them. She broke into small crumbs the way my grandmother used to do. The same way, his mother also broke the bread pieces into small little crumbs, and threw to them, that they would eat, because Grandma is no more. So his mother started throwing some bread pieces to the sparrows. But what happened? Unexpected things happened. That is, bread crumbs were thrown to the sparrows, but they never ate. They never ate. None of the birds were ate, never bothered. Sparrows took no notice of the bread. They never looked at the bread. It means they are also mourning the death of the grandma. And then we carried my grandmother's corpse's dead body. Corpse's dead body off. They flew away quietly. All the sparrows flew away quietly. And next morning, the sweeper swept the breadcrumbs into the dustbin. None of the sparrows ate that breadcrumbs. So the sweeper next day came and swept all the crumbs and put in the dustbin. So this is how Khushwant Singh beautifully describes the activities of his own grandma. Okay, so according to this great man, his grandma was so beautiful, and this lady also had so much of love for our author Khushwant Singh that he never forgets her in his lifetime. Thank you very much for watching. Kindly share and subscribe. Thank you. Thank you once again.